Hello, my name is Wendy Stefan. I'm the health educator and epidemiologist at the Poison Control Center in Miami. Today we're going to be talking a little bit about how to promote poison safety and some tips and resources for your home and for your community. So my Poison Center is down in Miami, and from our Poison Center we serve all of South Florida. So there's a little shot of our center. We're right across from the Ryder Trauma Center at Jackson Memorial and University of Miami Medical Center. We're one of 55 poison control centers in the United States. So we have 3 in Florida, 1 in Tampa, 1 in Jacksonville, and 1 in Miami. So we're serving all of South Florida from our office. We take calls 24 hours, 7 days a week. And at our center, we have the distinction of being staffed entirely by doctors, which is somewhat unusual around the country. So poison centers around the United States might be staffed by doctors, nurses, or pharmacists, depending on who's available in the community. So here in South Florida, we have access to a lot of MDs, and they are bilingual or multilingual, so that's really a wonderful plus for our community. A little bit about the Poison Helpline. You've probably seen this logo. This is the Poison Control Hotline. Before 2002, there used to be different numbers around the state or around the country. Different states would have different numbers. But now there is a single 1-800 number. You see it there. So it's 1-800-222-1222. The service is available everywhere in the United States. It's a national coverage, which is really important because we do collect data around the country to keep track of poison hazards that might be new, and even for detecting bioterrorism. So we are available, as I mentioned, 7 days a week, 24 hours, and all of our data is collected up into the National Poison Data System. This is very important because it gives us a near real-time view on poisonings in the United States. It's very important for public health. So the other name is Poison Control Hotline, so people know us as Poison Help or Poison Control. So the real selling points for our service is, first and foremost, it's fast. When you dial 1-800-222-1222, you are talking to a person who does nothing but treat poisonings all day, every day as their career. So as I mentioned, our poison specialists are all doctors. So you are speaking to someone with a tremendous amount of experience who can assess whatever's going on in your home immediately. The service is free. This is really important. And most important to a lot of families is the fact that our service is confidential. A lot of people have fears that we might share information with police or with Child Protective Services, when in fact our service is entirely confidential. We are not considered mandatory reporters for child abuse, which is very, very important because when a parent feels bad about something that's happened to a child, the last thing we want them to do is delay. So we want them to reach out and get the help they need from us right away. Okay, so some of you may be familiar with poison control, and you've maybe heard the type of calls that we take, and you may think of us as being for children, and certainly we do receive calls about children. So the most common that we hear, really, a lot of people think of this first call. So a call might sound like, you know, oh no, my son drank some bleach from the laundry room. Okay, this is kind of the classic call for poison control, where a child has gotten into a household chemical. So certainly we do take calls about this type of poisoning. You might be surprised that most of these cases we can actually help the caller on the phone without the need for involvement of the hospital. Each call is different, of course, that's why we want you to give us a call, but it is very important that most of our calls we can handle over the phone for free. Here's another type of call we get. This is a real call that actually came from Fort Myers area. A woman called because she was bitten by a snake that was nestled into her golf bag. It was nestled right in there with the clubs, but it was a non-venomous water snake, so we were able to identify the snake for her and help her just clean up the wound. She didn't need to go to the hospital at all, so it was pretty cool. All right, here's another call we're getting more and more, and a lot of people do not realize that they can call the Poison Control Center for medicine mistakes. Most of us take medicine, and some of us take really complicated medical regimens, and in fact, we are there to help if someone makes a mistake, right? So that might be this example, you know, I took my blood pressure medicine twice by accident. Well, that can make you lightheaded. That maybe means you shouldn't go for a walk. Maybe you shouldn't drive. And it may be, depending on the medicine, that you need to go to the hospital. Okay, so that's another type of call we help people with. Here's another. So this is maybe a parent. You know, I gave Tylenol 2 hours ago, but my child's fever didn't come down. Can I give Advil now, right? So here we're using some brand names of products, but it doesn't matter to us. We'll be able to identify that product. And in this case, there isn't a poisoning, right? This is a question. So the parent has done something and is calling because that parent is concerned that maybe what they're about to do isn't a good idea, right? Can these two medicines go safely together? So in this case, the answer is usually yes, but we're really glad to get the call so we can assess the specifics of the circumstance. So we call this an information call. Here's another. So this is use a different caller using some different language, you can see. So I have a patient here who's taken E2OH, APAP, Wellbutrin, and Seroquel about 1 hour ago. So here this isn't a parent, right? Maybe this is a parent, but the person is calling in the context of being a healthcare professional. So this call has come in from a hospital. This case may be a situation where someone has taken alcohol and combined it with acetaminophen and other drugs, maybe in an attempt to hurt themselves. Right. So this is a very serious case, and we're actually working with the hospital to treat that caller. Here's a different type of scenario. So this call is about saying, I have a person in custody with 3 tablets in a baggie. Can I get an ID on these? Right? So this is really useful for police, for instance, and also for border protection, where they have someone, or even a school police officer, where they have tablets or pills or something, and they need help figuring out, is this Advil? Is this some harmless thing, a diet pill you can buy over the counter? Or is this a controlled substance that we need to be concerned about? So we are able to do that, to provide that information very, very quickly, and so that they know what they're dealing with. So you can really see we do a lot more than people realize, and these are the types of calls we get. So here are 3 different images that were submitted by callers. So there's the golf bag there, and the snake nestled in there. You can see it there at the bottom. In the middle, we have a call that came into us. It was a very serious adult poisoning, in this case, where a person had mistaken one plant for another and consumed a dangerous plant. Okay, and then on the right, you can see that's a camera phone image of a coral snake. So this was from a bite from a caller. So all of these were submitted to us as part of the work we do in identifying what's going on for that caller in that moment. Okay, so we have some barriers to access. The biggest issue is that people don't know about us, right? So people can't reach us if they've never heard of us or don't know that poison control is there for them. Many people think we're only for children, and so that can be a barrier to us getting the help to people who need it. Another issue might be that they're worried that their information is going to be shared, and that's understandable, of course, but as I mentioned, our services are confidential. And then the last barrier, ironically, is that sometimes people believe they already know what to do with a poisoning. So an example might be that someone thinks that for every poisoning, you make the person throw up, right? That makes sense intuitively, but it turns out that that can be harmful. So for instance, if someone has swallowed something that is very caustic or burns, and then that person vomits, that actually can burn twice, right? So we wouldn't want that. Other people think you give milk. So a lot of people have the sense that milk is a bit magic, but in fact it's not, and there are, the great majority of serious poisons are not affected at all by milk, so we don't want people using milk. What we really want people to do is just call. So here's a little data from from the poison control centers around the country, and as I mentioned earlier, we're not only serving families, so you can see now that 45% of our calls are about young children under 6, but that is actually the minority, right? So we actually receive calls from people of all ages. So older children, teens, lots of calls about adults, and older adults. So we are really there to serve everyone. Okay, why are people calling? Like what happened? So mostly we're hearing about unintentional poisonings. So accidents. People mixed up their medicines, gave the medicine to the wrong sibling, situations like that. Got a drink from a bottle they thought was one thing but was something else. So then the other cases are in fact intentional, and those tend to be situations where someone has tried to harm themselves. Okay, so we take all of these calls very seriously. The other question is, okay, what do we do with these callers? So that's the information there on the right. Again, national data from the American Association of Poison Control Centers. You can see that we're actually able to manage most of the calls we receive about poisonings at home. So we don't have to send people off to the hospital in most cases. This saves people a ton of money, and we're really happy to do that to make sure that people are getting the right care. Now, the other 20-some% is the people we do need to send to the hospital, and for those callers, we will follow up their cases. A lot of people don't realize we also provide case management. So poison control centers follow that caller in the hospital until discharge, making sure that people in the hospital understand the exposure, they understand the most current treatments, and are getting the very best care. Here are some of the calls we're seeing that most commonly these days. So that, again, this is data that's national. So these days, the single most common call we get is about a medicine for pain. It's not surprising, right? A lot of us take medicine for pain. Some are over-the-counter, some are prescription drugs. And so 11.1% of the calls we received that particular year were specifically about pain medicines. Cleaning substances, not surprising, right? A lot of children get into pain medicines, cleaning products in the home. We also see calls about cosmetics, sedatives, antidepressant medications, antihistamines, cardiovascular drugs, and even objects. So you'll see these are the types of things we're seeing around the country. So of course, it's a little bit of a different mix for different ages, right? So our little ones, we see a lot of calls about those cosmetics, things that smell good, that are beauty products. Maybe they have a flower on the label, or they smell nice or pretty, and so children are attracted to those products. And of course, the cleaning products. But you can see even for small children, number 3 is going to be those pain medicines. So those can be quite dangerous. So we're really pleased to get those calls so we can make sure the parent is getting the right care for the child. Now you're looking specifically at adults. Again, there's the pain medicine right there at the top, and then you see the sedatives, the antipsychotics, the antidepressants, and there's alcohol, right? So for adults, we have a little bit of a different mix of the types of poisons we see, and we're really there to help people no matter what. So medicines are really the big poison these days that we want to make sure people recognize that they can get help with from the Poison Control Center, with, of course, pain medicines being one of the most concerning, particularly because pain medications act on the central nervous system. And the central nervous system also controls our breathing, right? So when people overdose on pain medications, it can stop their breathing. This is especially true for opioids because opioids are quite powerful, and these are the medicines derived from opium, and these include medicines like Percocet, Vicodin, morphine, and all of these medicines are quite powerful and can be combined with medicines with similar effect that can be dangerous. I mentioned cleaning products, right? Cleaning products are very colorful, and these days you can find cleaning products that are scented like mango and coconut, and can be really confusing beyond the usual fruit, which has always been confusing. I mentioned cosmetics and personal care products. This was one of the poisonings in our family when my children were small. I had a daughter who got a fingerful of deodorant as I was trying to balance her on my hip at the same time as putting on the deodorant. I was multitasking and it wasn't a good idea. But so she got a mouthful of that deodorant, but it turned out to be no problem. I called the Poison Control Center and they walked me through what to do. We have some new issues that I wanted to mention. So we've always had to deal with calls about alcohol, right, in children. So they get a little sip of that adult's alcohol at a party and can have a problem, or they get into an adult's tobacco product, whether that means nibbling on a cigarette butt or sipping from a spit cup. That can also be the case. So they're getting exposed to nicotine. But now we have new products. So in the middle of this image, you see some of the e-refills for these e-cigarettes and the vaping devices. So these can have a very strong concentration of nicotine. And we have had one child fatality from a child that got into one of these products and sipped them. And of course, they are flavored. So some of the images that I have here, so it shows vanilla and mojito, different flavors. There can be fruit tart flavors, etc. And these can be quite confusing to children and toxic. And on the horizon, of course, we are concerned about edible THC-containing products. So we're already seeing some pretty severe exposures in children, for instance, that mistake these type of products that are pictured here as being candy bars, but in fact these are products that contain THC that can make children quite sick. So we are seeing those cases already in the emergency departments. And if Florida does move toward legalization in any form, we would expect to see more of these types of exposures. We do see exposures to poisonous plants. So this one here is the oleander. It's a beautiful plant, very drought resistant. You see it on the side of the road along the highways. But this is a very toxic plant, so it's not appropriate for children's play areas, for instance. The chemical in this plant is called a cardiac glycoside, so you can hear that it affects the heart. Florida has several species of venomous snakes. So there are 4 that are native to South Florida, and this is one of them. You can see this is the eastern diamondback rattlesnake. You can see its great big head and those diamonds on its back. And you can also note its very thick body. If you see that big head and that thick body, you're probably looking at a viper, and that is one of the types of venomous snakes we have native here in Florida. We help hospitals around our service area administer antivenoms, and those protocols might change over time. So we're there to make sure that every hospital is using the most current and up-to-date treatments for snake bite. So we're heading into hurricane season, so of course we always have to think a little bit about carbon monoxide year-round, but during hurricane season, absolutely, we do see a spike in poisonings from carbon monoxide, particularly from these portable generators like the one you see here in this image. So the safety guidance on portable generators can be a little impractical for cities because the recommendation from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention is to use a cord at least 20 feet long. So this can be difficult in a small urban lot to have that generator 20 feet from the home, right, without putting it outside a neighbor's bedroom window. So it can be quite challenging to use these products safely. So in addition to that nice long cord, you're also going to want to have a carbon monoxide detector in your home. We do recommend that everyone has a carbon monoxide detector installed in the home. My favorite is the kind that plugs directly into the wall. You don't have to wire it, you don't have to it's very easy. It can come with you if you move. If you're a renter, this is a really practical option, but really everyone should have the carbon monoxide detector and test it twice a year to make sure that it is working. Ideally, it can be built in with your smoke detector, but you can also get the kind that just is sniffing for carbon monoxide, and you'll know it's doing that because it'll have the symbol CO on it. So in terms of injury prevention, we always have the same sort of concepts, right? So we're going to make sure people are familiar with certain hazards, right? So we've been sharing some information today with you about some of the hazardous substances out in the community or maybe in your home. And then, of course, ideally we want to minimize contact, right? Because if it's harder to get into, we're going to have fewer poisonings. All right, and then ideally we're going to improve response and treatment, and that's where the poison control centers come in. When we get that call, we're going to make sure that the person knows how to handle it and that the hospital staff knows the most current techniques for managing that poison. So for little children, I mentioned this is very common. Children will get into things because of their natural developmental processes. They are putting everything in their mouth, right? If you care for a child, you've observed this is kind of nonstop. They're sucking on their hands and just putting things in their hands. So that's normal. They're very curious, right? So they're going to test things and taste things. And they're also imitating adults. So the parent might put on lipstick and the child comes along and eats the lipstick, right? So these are the types of things we see in children, and again, it's very, very normal developmentally, and parents shouldn't feel bad when their children do this because really they're wired to do this. They're learning about their environment. So we also see cases of parental error. So I mentioned, a medicine mistake with children. It's very normal in the hectic moment to hand out the wrong medicine to the child on the way out the door. We see that very commonly. Or we'll see the classic, mom gave the medicine and then dad gave the medicine. And then they both realize what they did and they think, oh no. So another really common situation. And then of course there are novel products. So for instance, you may be familiar with the Tide Pods. That was these single dose laundry packets came out and they were really colorful and pretty and attractive, and children found them interesting, and they would get into them. So they've improved the packaging for that, so we're really glad we've seen some of those exposures decrease, but we do still see an occasional child getting into that product, or even an older adult mistaking them for a bonbon or a marshmallow. Okay, and then look-alike products. So we see chemicals and cleaners have bright colors and look a lot like juice. Okay, for older adults, we see some similar patterns, right? The main issue is that people are taking a lot of medicine, right? And many of these medicines have similar names. So it's very easy to mistake a lorazepam with a alprazolam. Right? They sound similar. So one is much stronger than the other, right? So it's easy to see how someone could mix those up, right? Low vision, right? Our vision changes as we age, and we're not able to read the tiny type as effectively. So when we go to use a product, we may misunderstand what that product is for. For families who have a loved one with dementia, this is something you see right away, is there's a lot of confusion about maybe food imagery on a package, right? To them that looks like a food product, and they're not maybe able to understand that that product is in fact mango fabric softener, not a mango juice. Right? So for families with dementia, the Poison Control Centers are a real blessing because we're there to help you if someone makes that type of mistake in the home. Older adults are also more at risk for foodborne illness, which is also known as food poisoning. So a lot of these situations that people get exposed to food that's maybe contaminated, maybe there is a toxin, but often these are infections actually from organisms like Salmonella, E. coli, Shigella. All of these things can be carried in food. And then we do see self-harm in older adults. I think a lot of people might not recognize depression in older adults and maybe think about self-harm as being things only associated with teenagers, but that is certainly not the case. We do see cases of self-harm, including very serious or fatal attempts to harm themselves in older adults. So our guidance for prevention is, of course, to keep all the products that you need in the home, including medicine, up and away. You can use a cabinet lock if you like, if you have children, but really the most important thing is having things up high, out of sight, every time. So the product, maybe that medicine or that chemical is used and then put away right away. Right? We also want you to get rid of all the old stuff, right? So if you have a lot of old medicine in your home, it's time for a clean out, and many community fire rescue programs or sheriff's offices do have programs that will take back those medicines, dispose of them safely to protect your family and also avoid abuse in the community and to protect the environment, right? So it used to be that they would say just flush those things down the toilet. We no longer recommend flushing products into the toilet because there is a concern about this contamination of drinking water particularly. So when you are using chemicals in the home or medicines, we encourage people to use the safe minimum effective amount, right? So don't take too much, don't double up because you think it's going to be faster or more effective. Don't also use half of the medicine because you may not get the effect you want. And the same goes with chemicals, right? Use as little as possible, and that way you're less likely to be poisoned. And then of course we want you to get help if there is a poisoning. And of course the way to get help is to call the Poison Control Center, again at 1-800-222-1222. All right. We love to help our providers. As I mentioned, we do provide support to people treating poisonings, both on the road in the emergency medical services and also once people arrive in the hospital in the emergency departments or within the hospital for longer term care. So we're providing the most current up-to-date treatments and then we are kind of walking through people using antidotes, particularly new products. So as a new product comes out on the market, maybe a provider has never used that antidote before, so we're there to help with that. We also help with emerging hazards. So, new products come out on the market, new drugs of abuse. In South Florida, we dealt with the Flocka outbreak a few years ago, and that was really shocking, and everyone needed help to understand what this substance was, what it was doing to patients, and also how the providers needed to protect themselves when they were caring for these patients. We provide that case management, we follow them through until discharge, and then we also share responsibility, right? So it's helpful to avoid mistakes as we treat patients. Okay, and this is the magic word for our providers. The Poison Control Centers are HIPAA exempt, so they are able to share information so that when we call back and say, hey, how's that patient doing? How are the liver enzymes, or how's the antidote working? They are able to share that information with us because we are part of the care team. So to learn more about the Poison Control Centers in Florida, you can visit www.floridapoisoncontrol.org. We're on Facebook, and we put out quite a bit of information and images that are shared by our callers, with permission, of course, about the types of things we're seeing, and seasonal and trends, new products and that type of thing. And we're on Twitter at Florida Poison. So I encourage you right now to take a minute to save that 1-800-222-1222 number into your phone. You can also text the word POISON, that's POISON, to 797979 to have the VCF card put directly into your contacts. So thank you so much for your time, and I urge you to be poison safe and reach out to us if you ever need us. Thank you.